Welcome to this presentation of Oracle Backup and Recovery. This chapter will be discovering recovery configuration. My name is Steve Hamilton and I will be your instructor for this course. If you have any questions or comments, please use the question and comments box below. Okay, let's get started. In this chapter, we will be discussing Oracle database configuration. The first option will be Archive Log Mode. By configuring your database in Archive Log Mode, you're effectively saying your database can recover to the last committed transaction, or you can recover your database to a specific point in time in the past. This is ideal for production systems which do not want to lose any data. The other configuration option is configuring your database in No Archive Log Mode. This is the default configuration for all Oracle databases. By placing your database in No Archive Log Mode, we're effectively saying there is no recovery, or you can only recover your database to the last full cold backup. So if your failure occurred on Friday, and the last time you performed a backup was on Monday, you could only restore your database till Monday's backup. The last option, which was introduced in version 10, was configuring the database for flash recovery mode, or configuring the flash recovery area. This effectively is putting the database in a rewind mode. So if the failure occurred at 8 o'clock this morning and it's now 2 o'clock in the afternoon, all you have to do is rewind your database till 8 o'clock this morning or immediately prior to the failure. Now, typically placing a database in No Archive Log Mode does not require any work. This is the default configuration of all Oracle databases. Means no recovery. The way you would back up your database is you would shut it down, back up the appropriate data files, control files, and online redo log files, and then if a failure, just restore those files. It does mean little or no recovery, but it is simple to back up and it is simple to restore. Again, this is the default behavior of all Oracle databases, and the reason it's the default is because there's some databases that may not need to be placed in Archive Log Mode. For example, a data warehouse. A data warehouse may not be placed in Archive Log Mode, as well as a dev environment, QA environment, or a test environment. Also, by placing your database in Archive Log Mode would require additional disk space. By placing it in No Archive Log Mode does not require additional space. A database that is operating in No Archive Log can only be restored to the last full cold backup. It can only be restored while the database is down, and it can only be backed up while the database is down. So placing your database in Archive Log Mode limits your backup options, also limits your recovery options. This is one of the reasons that it is good for a test and development system, because those systems can be down when a backup is being performed, and they can also be down when a restore is being performed. A No Archive Log Mode database can only be backed up cold, and it cannot be restored hot. So what we're saying here is if a system is operating 24/7, placing your database in No Archive Log Mode is not a valid solution, because in order to back it up, you must shut your database down, and in order to restore it, the database must also be shut down. If you are solely operating your database in Archive Log Mode or No Archive Log Mode, in event of a failure, you will incur data loss. If a disk is lost and you have to restore a particular file, you can only restore it to your last full cold backup. So again, if the failure occurred on Friday, the last time you performed a backup was on Monday, you would lose Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday's work. Now we want to talk about database terms. We've already discussed No Archive Log, but when we also talk about Archive Log Mode, it means the database may be recovered to the last committed transaction or to a specific point in time in the past. When we say our database is operating in Archive Log Mode, what we're saying is the online redo log files are archived to a separate location on the operating system. The definition of a database operating in an Archive Log Mode is it will not overlay an unarchived redo log file. Archive log mode is recommended for most production systems. The only time an archive log mode database wouldn't be recommended for a production system is if this production system was a data warehouse system, and that data can easily be reproduced. It is also recommended for databases where the loss of data would be unacceptable. And again, please keep in mind the definition of an archive log database is it will not overlay an unarchived redo log group. When you configure your database to operate in archive log mode, the DBA is responsible for determining the locations of the archive log files. So as Oracle applies changes to the database, those changes are written to the online redo log files. When those online redo log files perform a switch, there's an Oracle background process that takes a copy of those files and places them to a separate location on the operating system. It is best practices is for that location to be a minimum of 2 locations. By default, in an Oracle 10G environment, the archive log destination is automatically written to the flash recovery area. It is also recommended that you write those archive log files to a separate location. This way, if one of the locations fails, you can easily recover from another location. There are several parameters that control the archive log destinations. The first one is configuring what is referred to as the FRA. The FRA in an Oracle environment is referred to as the flash recovery area. This is determined by the Oracle startup parameter called db _recovery _file _dest. This can be written to a separate location on the operating system. The best practice in an Oracle environment is to have this to be its own separate mount point or its own separate destination. Best practices within Oracle is to have one mount point for software, one mount point for data, and one mount point for the flash recovery area, which is determined by this parameter. This parameter is a dynamic parameter, effectively meaning that it can be adjusted on the fly. So if for some reason your flash recovery area or your DB recovery file dest area fills up, the DBA can issue a specific command to change that to be written to another location. Again, please keep in mind that best practices is write to a minimum of 2 locations. To make this change on the fly, the DBA would simply issue this command: alter system set db _recovery _file _dest to the new flash recovery location. Automatically, all of the archive log files, or the new archive log files, will be written to this new destination. We'll place our database in archive log mode. To place our database in archive log mode, we have 5 steps. The first step is to issue a shutdown immediate. When we issue a shutdown immediate, the database will wait for all processing to stop. So if you have an end user with a long-running transaction, the database will wait for that transaction to complete. It will automatically roll back any of those uncommitted changes and bring the database down. The next step will be to issue a startup mount. By issuing a startup mount, the database will start up the instance, mount the control files, but it will not actually open the database yet. Once the database is in a startup mount, the DBA simply issues the command alter database archive log. This is a one-time occurrence. The DBA will never have to issue this command again. Now, if they wanted to take it out of archive log mode, they'd issue the same commands, except for saying alter database archive log, they would say alter database no archive log. After they've issued the alter database archive log, we then issue the command alter database open. Your database is now up and running and available for use, and it is currently operating in archive log mode. After you've successfully placed it in archive log mode, we want you to back up the database. Because we placed the database in archive log mode, we could back up the database hot, but best practice, quite frankly, is to shut your database down and perform a full cold backup, and this will give you your baseline backup. So let's recap those steps. First of all, we will do a shutdown immediate, which will wait for all processing to terminate. Then we will issue a startup mount, which will start up the instance, mount the control files. Then issue alter database archive log, alter database open, and then finally back up our database. Placing your database in this archive log mode is a one-time step. The DBA will never have to do it again. And then finally, if your DBA wants to take your database out of archive log mode, the actual command will be alter database, no archive log. Now, because we've placed our database in archive log mode, this means that we can back up the database hot and we can recover the database hot. If we lose any type of data file, with the exception of a system data file, a system data file would actually be the system data file or the undo data file. All we have to do is restore the damaged file and apply the archive log files to current, and then the file is fully recovered. We can do this while the database is totally up and running. All we have to do is take the file offline, restore the file, and then recover the file. When a database is operating in archive log mode, it can be backed up hot, it can be restored hot. Only restore the damaged data file. Never restore control files or online redo log files when your database is operating in archive log mode. This would be just like if you were writing a book and you lost a chapter in the book. You would never restore the entire book. You would only restore that specific chapter that you lost. The same is true here when operating an Oracle database. Only restore the file that was lost. By placing the database in archive log mode, it does allow the DBA to recover the database to the last committed transaction. The downfall of putting your database in archive log file is it will require additional space on your system. An archive log file is the exact same size as an online redo log file. If you have an online redo log file, and that online redo log file is 100 megabytes, and you go through those 100 megabytes one a minute, that means every minute you're creating an additional 100 megabytes on your operating system. So after 10 minutes, you can accrue an extra gig of space on your operating system. And if you're a 24/7 shop, this can create an awful lot of additional space on your operating system. This is one of the reasons that organizations may not place their databases in archive log mode, strictly because it will require such an additional amount of disk space. The way that you can get around that is back up your archive log files more often and remove them from the operating system after they have been backed up. After the database is backed up, all archive log files prior to the backup are no longer needed. So if I did a full database backup on Monday, any of the archive log files that were generated prior to Monday are not needed. This is one of the reasons that organizations will back up their databases once or twice a day, because any of those archive log files needed prior to that backup can be removed from the system, therefore releasing space back to the operating system. Effectively, placing a database in archive log mode makes it unstoppable. There is no point in time that you cannot recover the database to. We are guaranteed to recover our database to the last committed transaction, as well as any specific point in time in the past, whether that was 1 hour ago, 1 day ago, or 1 week ago. Within an Oracle 10 and 11G environment, the DBA can have up to 10 different archive log destinations. By default, we're automatically writing to the FRA, which is going to be the 10th archive log destination. But best practice is to write to at least 2 archive log destinations. If you do not specify an archive log location, Oracle will automatically write those archive log files to a different directory structure, and that directory structure is called Oracle Home/DBS. We do not want to write our archive log files to that directory structure. We want to write them at the very least to our flash recovery area and potentially to a completely separate mount point. Please make sure that you have plenty of space to write your archive log files to. If you run out of space writing your archive log files, the database will lock up and will not continue to process. By default, Oracle will use the 10th location from the FRA, or Flash Recovery Area. When you look at the initialization parameters, you will see this parameter, log archive underscore dest underscore 10. 10 is going to indicate the 10th destination, and it will be pointing to a dynamic parameter which is called use db recovery file dest. Now please keep in mind the recovery file dest is dynamic parameter. Therefore, if I change my recovery file dest on the fly, then the 10th destination will automatically be changed as well. By writing to multiple archive log destinations, Oracle requires that one of those destinations be a local destination, local to that node, and one of the destinations can be a remote node. Say if you're in a standby scenario, one of those nodes could be in your primary site and the other node could be in a secondary site. The archive log parameters that we are going to deal with, the first one is called log archive dest underscore n. Underscore n is going to indicate the specific destination, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, etc. By default, we will write to the 10th. We also recommend that you write your first destination to another file system destination. It can be a file system destination or an ASM destination. There's another parameter that we can use which is called log archive min succeed dest. If we write to multiple destinations, those destinations can be flagged as optional or mandatory. By using this parameter log archive min succeed dest, that's saying if we're writing to 5 destinations, we can specify that maybe 2 of them have to succeed. So of the 5 that we're writing to, we have to be able to successfully write to 2 of those destinations. Again, of those 5 that we're writing to, those 5 can be flagged as mandatory destinations or optional destinations. If a destination is referred to as a mandatory destination, then we must write to that destination. By specifying the log archive dest underscore n parameter, again, one of those destinations must be a local destination. One of those may be a remote destination. And in Oracle 10, as well as 11, we can have up to 10 destinations. The example of writing to a local destination, all of this is controlled by the Oracle's initialization parameter, or the SP file, or the P file. Again, these parameters are controlled on the fly, so each one of these locations can be adjusted while the database is up and running. The next archive log file will be written to the new location. So here we have the parameter log archive dest underscore 1 equal, we give it the keyword location, and then fully qualify that destination. So here we're saying that the first destination of our archive log files must be written to U01, FRA, or CL1 archive. This is also using a Linux or *X environment. If we're writing to our 10th destination, we can see log archive dest underscore 10 is going to be written to the logical, which is called use db recovery file dest. Now if we're writing to a remote location, you'll notice here we say log archive dest 2 is equal to a service, as opposed to the first example where it says we're actually writing to a location. And we're writing to the service standby, in this particular case, ORD. So we must have some sort of service called standby ORD, and then we'll write to that service. And that is actually controlled through our TNS names entry, which is a networking entry. Within SQL+, if you want to see specific archive log destinations, you can log into SQL+ as a system or sysdba and issue the command show parameter log archive. Log archive will show all of the destinations that your Oracle database is currently writing to. We can also go in and type in show parameter db underscore recov. And what this will do is show all of the destinations that are controlled by the recovery parameters. It'll show the destination of the flash recovery area, the flash recovery area size as well, and also the database retention time. The database retention time is used if your database is operating in flash recovery mode, which means how far back in time can we roll back the database to. This is typically set to 1 day. So effectively, we can go in and rewind the database back to 1 day. In Oracle 11g, there have been certain parameters that have been deprecated, or basically no longer used. One of those parameters is log archive duplex dest. This parameter has been around since versions 7 and 8 of the database, and now in a version 11 of the database, it is no longer needed or required. Also the parameter which is log archive dest. Now you'll notice this is different from the log archive dest _n. In version 11, we want you to use log archive dest _n, where n is going to represent the specific location. In version 11, the log archive dest parameter in and of itself, without the _n, has been removed. By specifying this parameter log archive min succeed dest, in this example, we've set the parameter is equal to 2. Now again, this is configurable on the fly. What we're saying here is if we're writing to multiple archive log destinations, we must be able to, at a minimum, be able to write to 2 of the destinations. So again, if we're writing to 4 destinations, 2 of those destinations must succeed. Each individual archive log destination can have a specific state. That state would indicate if that is enabled or disabled. Now this will also go hand in hand with the log archive min succeed. By default, all log archive destinations will be enabled. Basically, we're able to write to them. If for some reason that we want to disable that state, for some sort of operating system maintenance. Maybe we're going to add more space to that file system, or maybe that file system is going to be unavailable for a particular period of time. We'll have to specify the state as disabled, which means that the Oracle database will no longer write to that destination. If the destination is unavailable, effectively all we're going to do is disable it. The one thing that you will have to remember as a DBA is after you enable the destination, any of the archive log files that are not in that destination, any ones that are missing, will have to be manually copied over. So let's say that you had disabled the state and you're writing log sequence number 50. And when you re-enable the state, you're at log sequence version 55. The log sequence 51, 52, 53, 54, and 55 will no longer be in that destination. So you have to manually copy those files over from one surviving state or one surviving location to that location that was just re-enabled. When we specify additional attributes for archive log destinations, we can specify those attributes as mandatory or optional. This is an example of specifying that destination is mandatory. Log archive dest _1, that location, U01 archive Oracle, is a mandatory location, which means we have to be able to write to that destination. We can also specify a delay. When we specify a delay for our archive log destinations, basically Oracle is going to manually have some sort of delay to these locations. Like it's going to delay writing, in this particular case, to 120 minutes. So we're not going to write to this destination. For some reason, maybe that destination is going to be unavailable, maybe we're going to queue everything up for a period of time. But we're going to delay means that we are going to delay writing to that destination. Typically, if you're going to use the delay option, it is going to be used for a standby database. The reason you're going to have it for a standby database is that you want to reduce network traffic, and you may only want to ship these archive log files over after hours. We also have the ability to say reopen. Reopen means we're going to try for every 60 seconds to reopen this every 60 minutes to reopen this destination. If for some reason the archive log destination is unavailable, we will continue to try to reopen. Now, if we could have this parameter set to mandatory and reopen, which means every 60 minutes we're going to try to rewrite to this destination. This is a little bit different than delay. If for some reason that the file system was unavailable, we will continue to try it. With the delay, we're out of the gate, we are going to delay writing for a period of time. Okay, so that's placing our database in archive log mode. And it's identifying the specific parameters for the database in archive log mode. So what we've done is we placed our database in archive log mode. We're going to write to a minimum of 2 destinations. One is going to be the FRA, the other one is going to be another location. We're going to specify if those locations are mandatory or optional, as well as any sort of additional attributes to them. Most production databases are going to operate in an archive log mode environment. This will help us prevent from event of a disk failure. We can recover our databases to the last committed transactions with no data loss. It makes your database highly available and highly recoverable. By making it highly available, that's saying that if we have to perform a backup, we can perform the backup while the database is up and running, and if we have to perform a recovery, we can perform a recovery while the database is up and running as well. If you have any questions about any of the information covered in this presentation, please use the question and comment box below. Thank you for joining us.